Welcome everybody. Hi, this is Harrison Klein from the World Intuition Summit, and I am really having a great day today. I am in Florida at the moment. A very, very sunny day, right on the beach. The ocean is calm and sweet, and the sky is cerulean blue, and I'm right at the base of Collins Avenue, which is one of the main drags that Miami has. I am on the periphery here of interviewing one of my good friends, Dr. Steve G. Jones, who is somebody who grew up in Florida also, who shares an address very near, or his parents share an address very near where I live. And so it is a small world, as we find out sooner or later, that we pretty much know a very large percentage of the communities that we kind of dwell in and that we kind of circle in. So, Dr. Steve G. Jones, Dr. Steve G. Jones is a psychologist. He's a hypnotherapist. He is a person of, quality who has dealt with celebrities and executives and people around the world in the areas of hypnosis and NLP and a number of other great aspects of personal growth. He happens to be one of my heroes in a number of different ways, and so he's got a wealth of information that we're going to talk about today. And, being that this is an intuition summit and that we are exploring different areas of development, psychic development, which is psychic meaning soul, and the psyche is a soul in Greek. And so, since we're developing some of these things, Steve happens to be a past life regression therapist as well as knowledgeable of past lives. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So I want to welcome to our format and our forum here, Dr. Steve G. Jones. Hi, Steve.
Hey, Harrison. How you doing?
Good, sensational, wonderful, terrific, amazing, phenomenal, outstanding, incredible, awesome, turned on, turned up, resplendent and glorious.
Wow.
That's just for today.
I like it.
I like it too. As we start to, come into our awareness into the higher realms of integration, of higher consciousness, of connection with, spirit, if you will, connection with the awareness that is greater than the body, that, we start to de-identify with the biosuit. We start to come into all these levels of understanding and things, perceptions and receptions that we ordinarily would not have seen or experienced in everyday awareness. So tell me a little bit about the fact that, what it is, how you came to this understanding of past lives, past life regression, and then we'll kind of also give me a little bit about your history to how you got to that point, and then we're going to explore what actual past life regression is and what past lives are, okay?
Sure. As you know, I grew up in Fort Lauderdale, where you are now, and I was one of those kids whose parents threatened to send them to military school and actually followed through. So I got sent to military school in Gainesville, Georgia, like a boarding school, and I was stuck there, and I was bored out of my mind and feeling trapped, and I started reading books about things like hypnosis and past life regression. Now, I was a kid in high school, and luckily at the military school, everyone else is trapped too, so I had a lot of willing participants. They'd come to my room, lie down in my bunk bed, let me hypnotize them, and bring them back to past lives. So I started getting introduced to the idea of past life regression just by reading books about it. I'd go to the bookstore in town and get books about it and start reading, and I developed a fascination for it. For me, it was an escape. It was a way out of my immediate existence, and then I just kept studying it over the years.
So you took people back into past lives. So tell me a little bit about, what that involves, number one. And, the question first comes up is, whenever past lives comes up to a newcomer to anything like that, is that real or is that just imagination? Or how do we experience that? What is this? Where does this all stem from? What's the source?
Well, It's interesting, and I address these questions in my book that I wrote about past life regression because that's a big question. Are past lives real? And the next question would be, does it matter? It turns out that whether or not past lives are real, there's a tremendous therapeutic value in going back, quote unquote, back to a past life. For example, some people are averse to wearing turtlenecks or necklaces or ties or anything around their neck. You take them back to a past life or what they believe was one, and they find out they were hung from a tree. They had a noose around their neck, and of course they don't like those things. Once they have that realization, they are released from it. They're released from having that aversion to it. So first of all, whether or not they're real doesn't seem to matter as far as helping someone goes in a therapeutic session. Now, I believe they are real. I believe that we live, we reincarnate, we live again. There's been some research done on this. For example, there was a lady who was remembering a past life. This was written about in a book. I believe it's called Across Time and Death or something along those lines. This is a lady, a very intelligent lady. She was a member of Mensa, in fact, and she was remembering a past life in another country. She was American, born in America in this life, but she was remembering a past life in another country where she had about 5 kids, and she was remembering details. Well, she was able to go to that place. She was also able to track down those kids who had not passed on yet. So to put this into perspective, she remembered having been born around the 1920s or so, having these kids, having a full life with them, passing away, and then being born again. These kids were still alive from that first life. It's a little bit of math, a little difficult to follow perhaps, but they were still alive, so she was able to contact them in this life. So things like that offer tremendous evidence that this thing that we call past lives is actually happening.
Yeah, I've heard stories whereby, people just say that they had past lives in other countries and could speak languages that they have no particular knowledge of in the life that they're currently involved in. So,
yes.
And under those kinds of things come out. And so, there's no way that they could have learned Aramaic, for example, or something of that nature. So that kind of is mind-boggling in and of itself. So it just tests the fact that all of this out there is that there is indivisibility and that we can, in point of fact, be in this energy that is all-encompassing and around everything, and that we have this intuitive knowingness of all things if we can tap it. But let's talk about the past life process of that situation. So what happens in order to take us back into a past life? How do you do it, and then what do we learn from these kinds of things?
Well, the procedure is fairly straightforward. I like to do something I call priming the pump, first of all, because a lot of people have not experienced past life regression. During a past life regression, if you look up any of my YouTube videos about it, you'll see there's a lot of detail that comes out during the session. And then when I was hypnotizing Danny Bonaducci as part of a television show to bring him back to a past life, a lot of rich detail comes out. Well, a lot of people are not used to sharing rich detail. So I like to do something called priming the pump initially. I have them just imagine themselves, I have them close their eyes and imagine themselves in a room in their home and imagine all the detail. Perhaps it's a bathroom. They imagine the fixtures. They imagine what's on the ceiling. They imagine the colors. They imagine how the floor feels on their bare feet. They imagine those things, but they're not really imagining it. They're remembering how it feels. This is called priming the pump. I do this before the past life regression to make sure that they're able to conversationally relate to me the things that they're remembering in detail. That way I know that during the actual past life regression they'll be able to. So I do that process, priming the pump, bring them back out of that light state of hypnosis, and then we're ready for the session. During the session, I again put them into hypnosis using an induction, where I have them imagine themselves walking along a beach or something relaxing such as that. And I have them imagine the sun setting as I count from 10 to 1 as they relax more and more deeply. And I have them imagine relaxing their bodies, which they actually do in that moment. And then I have them imagine a train in front of them, and this train can run infinitely to the left or the right. The left is the past, the right is the future. So I have them sit in the train and take that train to the past. I have them imagine themselves going through a tunnel, That tunnel represents the dividing line between this current life and a past life of their choosing. And then I have them arrive at that past life at the age of 15 years old. Now, the reason I choose 15 is because life expectancies previously were not as long as they are now. People are living longer than ever now, but that's not always been the case. So 15 is a good age for a past life because they will not have crossed over yet into their next life. So I have them get out of the train and then begin describing what they see. Look down at your feet. Look around you. Who is there? Tell me what's going on. Tell me what you see. Now, I've already primed the pump because I've had them remember a room in their home and describe it to me, so I know that they're able to describe things to me in the rich detail. And at that point, it becomes like an interview. I'm asking them, what year is it? Where are you? Who are you? What is your name? What is the name of the country? I'm asking them all of these details. And then we can proceed from there therapeutically if there's something sort of like the noose around the neck, if there's something therapeutically that they need to be relieved of.
So it is a memory function. So we are actually going into the place of, looking cellularly or internally into the place of our memories. But one of the things you said that was very interesting to me, you said of their choosing. What do you mean of their choosing? You mean if we are going backwards, we are just stopping in a particular place, or you're saying, okay, when you were during the Inquisition, or you were in year 1521, or something of that nature. When you say of choosing, how does that translate?
Well, if we understand past lives to be a sequence of lives that we live, one after the other, with interim periods between where Earth years are still ticking, for example, perhaps between 1930 and 1940, as Earth years would be calculated, they were not in a physical body. Perhaps they were in their higher state and they were not reincarnated yet. So I would not say you will go to 1935 because I do not know if they were present on the earth at that time. So I allow them to choose for that reason, also because I believe their higher self will know which past life to analyze, which past life has something rich to offer them, or some sort of answer, or some sort of release from something they're dealing with now.
And so when we come into a past life, you think it has a particular advanced meaning when that is chosen that has relevance to the current time. Is that what you're saying?
I think so. I think the probability goes way up as opposed to me choosing it. The idea is, yes, that their higher self will know which past life they need to analyze, and they'll be shown something. At the very least, I'm going to ensure that they are actually here during that time that they choose.
Okay. So they're consciously choosing this themselves, but it's not an unconscious choice, whereas they go backwards, they say stop here, and you just happen to stop on something, but they're actually making a choice. The first closest former life, or somewhere back whenever, or it just sort of happens, and something emerges at that particular point under the hypnotic place.
Exactly. And rather than being a conscious choice, I would say it's an unconscious choice, or a choice made by their higher self. But aside from that, yes, I agree completely with what you just said.
Okay, so now we're in a place where we start to end up in another place. We start to look down, and we start to look at our feet and look at the surroundings that are around us. What happens at that particular point? How do we bring this into a relevance that has the current moment interest at heart?
Well, initially, it won't be very relevant, or at least it won't seem relevant. They'll describe wearing sandals, for example. They'll look around. They'll see mountains. You'll ask who they're with. They'll say they're with their family. They'll give very, very basic information that you wouldn't think is very interesting. The next step, as I mentioned, is to use the session for more of a therapeutic purpose. So I will have them then move forward in that past life to something that was important to them. Again, an invitation for their overself to direct the show, to take them to a time when something happened that was significant. So here we'll usually witness the passing of a family member or a traumatic event or a wonderful event, something that happened that really made an impact, not only in that life, but has an impact that has persisted either positively or negatively all the way through to their current life.
And so one of those, so something that has persisted, that has come all the way through. So how does that then become therapeutic to the current?
Well, if we find something such as they were hung from a tree, for example, or they were burned at the stake, maybe they have an aversion to certain types of people. Maybe it's a woman who has an aversion to men, and turns out she was burned at the stake by men. Maybe it's a person who feels persecuted all the time, and turns out they were persecuted as a witch. This is one of the more common themes that I've seen. So we find things like this, and we find people having the insight into it, and it's interesting how they're immediately released from it. It's not a process where they then have to have counseling afterwards. Once they have this insight, they're immediately released from it. So, for example, if they had the past life where they were hung from a tree, immediately they're no longer averse to turtlenecks. If they had the past life where they were burned at the stake by a group of people, they no longer feel persecuted. It's things like this that really show the power of it.
So the discomfort is released. Whatever that discomfort happens to be is released.
Exactly.
So is it the act of awareness that releases the discomfort, or is it a belief system that happens, or is it that we visualize and then make a resolution to sort of let go?
It seems to be a combination of all of those things. The actual realization of it seems to be good enough. And I'm hoping that there's something deeper going on, as you mentioned, that there's some sort of resolution going on as well. But in my experience, it seems to be, at least on the surface, it seems to be something along the lines of, oh my goodness, why would I be, opposed to turtlenecks? Now that I see how silly it is and how it's based on something that happened so long ago, why would I be constrained by that right now? But I also like to believe that there's a higher component going on, as you mentioned, that there's some sort of deeper insight into it that they're seeing and gaining from.
Okay. So when we start to come into this space, is this only accessed when we are in a hypnotic state, or are there other elements and times when we can access this outside of the hypnotic state?
Well, as a hypnotherapist, I only do it with hypnosis. I only have people access past lives with hypnosis. I would imagine that if you were a medical doctor, you could give someone a truth serum. My understanding is that has a lot of therapeutic value as well. If you're a psychic, you could have them access it psychically. I believe there are a number of avenues. The only one that I use is hypnosis.
Okay, now let me ask you this. Have you taken yourself back?
I have not, but when I was 16 years old, when I first started getting into this, I had a good friend whose name is also Steve. I trained him to the best of my ability when I was 16 years old. I was in military school, so when I was home for summer break between 10th and 11th grade, or between 11th and 12th grade, somewhere in that neighborhood, I trained him. I said, look, I'm into this thing, this past life regression. Let me tell you about it. Let me tell you how to do this. And I trained him well enough that he was able to regress me to a few past lives, actually. If what we found out was accurate, one past life was I was a Viking warrior on a ship. I remember standing with leather straps and a sword, and we were going to conquer new lands. In another past life, I was a painter in France. I remember being very inspired by the vines that would grow on the side of buildings. I was some sort of hand surgeon in Egypt, interested in helping people. Those are the past lives that I remember. Now, this was, I was 16 then, approximately 16 then, and I'm 46 now, so that was 30 years ago. So to the best of my recollection, remembering 30 years back about these past lives that were long ago, that's what I recall.
So take me into the experience for a second, Steve. And so now you're in a past life that you remember in Egypt, or you're in or on a Viking ship or whatever. Take me into the experience. How long does it last? What is the experience of you being separate, seeing yourself, or are you in the body of the being that you are talking about? Or take me directly into this experience, can you?
Sure. Well, when I first had that done, when I was a kid, I didn't have any formalized training at that point, and so I just had my friend regress me and have me imagine myself there, first person. I'm right there experiencing it. I have since, through training, and now that I train people to do this, I've since learned and seen that it's better to have them detach a little bit, because some people get very emotionally invested in it. So they're experiencing it, they're getting caught up in it, they're reliving it, they start to have an emotional reaction to it. So in my experience and opinion, it's better to have them observe it, sort of like they're watching a movie or watching something on TV. When I did it, the first time I experienced it, when I was approximately 16, it was firsthand. I was right there. I was on that ship. I was holding that sword. I was excited about going to new lands. When I was a painter in France, I was walking down the street. I was looking at the buildings. I was getting ideas for painting, looking at the vines growing down the sides of buildings. I can still remember it vividly to this day. When I was in Egypt and I was a hand surgeon, I was helping patients. I was seeing them come in. I was operating on them. I was working with them. So for me, it was a firsthand, very vivid experience. And the reason I don't advise doing it that way now, my experiences were wonderful. There's nothing negative about them. But many people, as I mentioned, have traumatic events that happen to them, being hung, being burned, being drowned, all sorts of interesting things. And to remember those firsthand can be very traumatic and actually works against the therapeutic value that you're attempting to add to their lives. So I recommend having them watch it as a TV show or a movie.
Okay, well, as a therapist, you must be very strongly connected to intuition, because intuition is a big part of coming into our wholeness. So, when you talk about, the intuitive process here, how does that play into this? I mean, where is, as a psychic, as an intuitive, how does this actually function? What's the function in this both process and experience simultaneously?
Well, I believe it comes into play anytime you give the client the liberty to choose something. For example, if they're going to choose the past life they're going to analyze, that's their intuition. Also, many times clients will visit with me for the first time and they'll say, you know what, I've been decorating my entire house with Egyptian stuff. It doesn't make any sense to me, but I love the ancient Egyptian lore. I have, the little statue of the Sphinx. I have all sorts of Egyptian writing hanging on my wall. I'm very much into all sorts of things like that. That's a pretty big hit. That's a strong indicator that they had a past life in Egypt. That's where intuition comes in. Now, sometimes it's not as obvious as that. Sometimes they've just been having some dreams, maybe some vague dreams about Egypt, if we're talking about Egypt, for example, which tends to be a very common and strong one, by the way, for people to have lived in. So we look for things like that. That's where intuition comes in. Intuition also comes in when I do the past life regression. Even if they have no inkling of who they were, where they were, I let them choose. That's them using their intuition. That's them working with their higher self to choose that. Also, when we take them forward in that past life to the point at which something happened, something traumatic, or at least something very important or poignant in their lives, that's intuition also.
Does it function in the same way as memory? And you say, okay, can you remember this, or is there a process whereby you are standing in your body, or you are looking at your body, and there is a sort of intuitive hint as to what's going on, or whatever? Because I know that. Let me regress here. I'm sorry. I want to just regress here for one quick second. I was told. Now, the first time I saw Mayan calendar back before 2012 here, I had never seen that 28-day calendar and what it was like and what was going. I had a visceral experience when I saw the Mayan calendar. My gut wrenched up and it got tight, and you know, I sort of had a something that I've never experienced by just looking at something in that way. And so what I was told was that I had been a priest back in the Mayan days. Now that's you know, whether or not that was true, I have no idea. But you know, that's the kind of intuitive experience that you're talking about here. You can have a visceral experience from something, and because makes no sense whatsoever, it is an indicator of the past life, and that, you know, we can actually go back to that from such an indicator.
Yes, that's an excellent indicator. And if you came to my office and you had shared with me that you had a gut-wrenching reaction to the Mayan calendar, I would definitely write that down. And I do my best not to guide the client, but chances are you would go back to that life where you were experiencing that, whether it's in well, I would imagine it would be in Mexico or whatever it would have been called back then, and you would probably go back there automatically. But that's the type of intuitive hit I'm talking about, yes.
Okay, and so when something like that happens, I mean, it's like a bullet from the past coming into the present. So what? I mean, how do we interpret that? How do we understand that situation? I mean, it's sort of mind blowing when something like that happens. So how do we interpret any of that stuff? Is it an emotional interpretation? Is it a intellectual interpretation? Is it just a cosmic interpretation? Where do we get from these kinds of things?
Well, different people get different things. If you were to just have that gut-wrenching reaction when you saw the Mayan calendar, you would interpret it how you normally interpret things. Perhaps you would, you know, think of it as something emotional, or you would intellectualize it. People have all sorts of reactions depending on the way they're built, the way they just are, the way they interact with their world. In hypnosis and past life regression hypnosis, we work on getting some sort of resolution to it. You know, why are you having a gut-wrenching reaction when you see the Mayan calendar? What happened? What is your relationship to the ancient Mayan civilization? So we would look for that. We would probe and attempt to find out what's going on, and if there is anything from that experience that's affecting your life negatively now, we would attempt to remove that. And if there's some benefit that we can bring into your life from that, we would also attempt to do that as well.
Okay, so give me, if you would, a couple of experiences that maybe your clients have. What has been a couple of some of the more interesting experiences your clients have? Give me one or two of those, really, you know, ones that stand out in your mind as being dramatic or traumatic or something of that nature.
Well, there's a story I heard. Now, this is not anything from my work. This was someone else's work. A lady who was. The story that I heard was a lady who was averse to perfume, and she was taken back into a past life, and it turns out that she had some unfortunate experiences in a fish market, and apparently fish oil makes up the basis of most perfumes. So the idea is that the reason she didn't like perfume is because of the experience she had in that area. Also, as I've mentioned, people who don't like things around their neck, ties, necklaces, etc., taken back to a past life, they're hung from a tree. People who are afraid of the water, taken back to a past life and they drown in a past life. People who are, unrealistically afraid of fire. I think a fear of fire is a natural thing and a good thing, but wanting to stay so far away from it, that's a bit excessive. Taken back to a past life, finding out they were burned at the stake. Things like this. We see these things regularly, those of us who deal with past lives. So these are some things, aside from the perfume experience that's from someone else's work, but aside from that, I've seen the other ones firsthand. I've experienced those with clients in the office.
Okay. So, what is the relationship to the therapist themselves? Are you a guide in this process, or are you, are you not because if we understand, the essence of the whole, quantum experience of indivisibility, or, the quantum field, that we are all part of the same thing, and we are all the same thing. What we see in another, we see in ourselves. So what is the relationship to the therapist in this particular case? Is this a meant-to-be situation? Is it a fate? Is it that you are sharing because there's some sort of connection between you and the client that may be beyond that of a therapy situation, or that may have some, help me to understand how one is even prompted to experience this kind of thing, especially from a therapeutic point of view.
Well, I believe that we're all part of the same organism, if you will. We're all tied together. When you win, I win. When we help someone else, we do help ourselves. And that's true on a spiritual level also. I believe we're all tied together. So a lot of the benefit that I personally get from someone else's past life, no matter who it is I get to see how I can release myself from the things that I get hung up on. I may not have the exact situation that they're describing that they went through, but I have my own things that I go through. And it's interesting how when I work with clients, I see themes, something that I'm working on. That week, those are the clients that will come into my office, the ones who are working on something related to that. It's very interesting. So I believe that we are all having very similar experiences. We are part of this collective. This idea, we'd probably give credit to Carl Jung for coming up with it initially. And I think that it is an accurate idea that we do experience the same things. We are all evolving. When we work on world hunger, we're helping ourselves because there are fewer people who are in need, and that helps us all feel better. When we work on spiritual issues, we help each other, but we also help ourselves because we are elevated to a higher level. So I do see these recurring themes, and I do see how we all benefit when one person benefits.
Okay, so now let me ask you this: do we each need a therapist to go there, can we regress ourselves into these places?
You absolutely can. You can, hypnotically, you can make a recording for yourself. You can make a past life regression recording once you understand how to do it. You can just get a book on it, and either one of my books or anyone else's, and do that yourself. Or you can, I wouldn't do it in the moment, because with hypnosis, if you put yourself into hypnosis and if you fall asleep during it, then both the therapist and the client have fallen asleep. So no one's hypnotizing anyone. So make a recording for yourself in case you fall asleep. Falling asleep is fine. That's still considered a deeper state of hypnosis. You'll still be able to retain the information and recall it. But there are other ways. If, as I mentioned earlier, if one were a psychic, they could access it that way. People access this information through astral travel at times. Some people through using a pendulum can access this information. Accessing information from your subconscious mind using a pendulum, drawing an X and Y axis on a piece of paper and just holding the pendulum over the origin where the two cross and asking, have I had past lives? One axis is yes and one is no, and seeing which way the pendulum swings. And then you can get more detailed from there. Was I alive in this year? No. Was I alive in this year? No. Was I alive in this year? Yes. And so you can pinpoint the exact year. So using a pendulum is a very straightforward way. We understand from using the pendulum, you just get something that's weighted and hold it with some sort of string over something that has an X and Y axis, and then you are getting information from your subconscious mind through the minimal movements of your hand. And so that's a way to get information without even going into hypnosis.
So can you, as a human being yourself, see past lives in other people? Can you actually see what they're describing?
I'm sure I could if I worked on that, but I don't. Now, one thing that when I had my office in Beverly Hills for about 4 years, I was in the Roxbury Medical Building, I was a little stressed out. I didn't get a whole lot of sleep during that time. I was dealing with a lot of high-pressure celebrity clients. I would usually show up to the office a little tired from the day before because I was kind of taking on all of their stuff. And one thing I noticed during the sessions was that when they talked about something, a past life, or even if they weren't talking about a past life, and when I was looking at their faces would morph into another face. Now, a lot of times I just chalk this up to sleep deprivation. I was very tired, so I was hallucinating to some degree. But I believe there also could be a component to it, some sort of psychic component, where I was seeing them as they were in a past life.
So they would actually, when you say morph, their physical feature would change? Their physical features would actually change?
I don't believe...
In your perception?
In my perception, they would change. I don't believe anything actually changed about them. I believe just it was happening in my mind that I was seeing that. But yeah, they would change into something else. They would look completely different. Sometimes they would change gender and appearance. Sometimes the age would change and the appearance. So all sorts of things were happening. I don't believe it was an actual physical change happening with them at all. I believe it was my perception, and it is possible that that was some sort of intuition coming to me.
Okay, so the perception of these kinds of things then begin to create a present moment distortion, at least from the position of the perceiver, or at least in your particular case at that moment, and their voice may have changed as well, and their demeanor may have changed. Is that also something that could have happened?
That very well could have happened. Most of the time I was doing just suggestive hypnotherapy with them. In past life regression, it's interactive hypnotherapy where you're interviewing them. Who are you? Where are you? What's the year? What are you wearing? And so forth. In suggestive hypnotherapy, I'm just programming them to, usually I was dealing with actors, so I was programming them to be more powerful, get the next role, etc. So I wasn't able to monitor their voice under hypnosis because they weren't talking at all. It was just me talking. But there is a possibility. I'm sorry?
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I'll take my question in a second. Just don't follow your train.
Okay. So there is a possibility that if they had spoken, that the voice would have been perceived by me as being different than their normal voice.
Okay. So I wanted to explore the psychic portion of that. Now, is it your belief that when we are in higher consciousness, we can access the past life of another human being?
I believe that is possible. We get into strictly metaphysical concepts when we talk about that, and we're probably dealing with something that's called the Akashic record, the record of everything that's ever happened and potentially could happen. And when we get into things like that, we get into privacy issues, we get into metaphysical privacy issues. Looking into someone's past, sort of doing a psychic background check on them is something that we would need higher permission to do. I always caution people about that. But once you have that, and if you do get into a study of the Akashic records, you meaning whoever's listening, because Harrison, I know you're probably interested in that already, then you can learn how to do that and get access to those sorts of things with permission.
Okay, and so when you look into other people's past life, what is the benefit to you in order to do that? What is the benefit to the other person? I mean, is it the same kind of benefit? There's a relief, or does it only happen when we are positively and sincerely motivated to help, or are there restrictions that are involved in all that?
Yeah, I wouldn't think it would happen in any other case other than a case in which you have permission from the person and there is a reason why they want you to look in there. So you are acting as a tool for them, a facilitator. You're providing value for them, not necessarily for yourself. So you've been asked by them to look at their past life. You've got their permission. You access the Akashic records, the record of everything that's ever happened and potentially could happen. And I say potentially could happen because the future is still unknown. There are potentials, but it's not known yet. And you share that with them for a reason that they have produced. They want to find out why they don't like fire, for example, to make it a very simple example. They want to find out why they're having difficulty with relationships, something like that. Maybe it's some sort of health question that they have. So you're providing value for them based on their guidance.
Yeah, is it necessary or is it relevant to most people to explore their past lives? So, I mean, if they believe in death, or is it a matter of belief also? I mean, and is it relevant to the current life?
Well, for most people, I don't think most people would want to do that. I think most people are content with this life, and they feel that they have enough challenges in this life, not realizing that some of those things may be from a past life. So I don't think this is. If you're asking me, is it for everyone? I would say no. Most people have no reason to. A lot of people are extremely well adjusted and aren't really working on anything major, so they don't really have the desire or need to delve into a past life. But for those cases in which someone does have an inkling to find out what's going on, or they have a challenge they want to be relieved of, or they want to just explore. Maybe they're just bored and they want to explore. In those cases, this type of information would be very valuable to them.
So tell me how a psychic would access somebody's past life, or a astral traveler, or how we can astrally travel into a past life.
Okay. Well, in the program that I developed a few years ago about that, I can share with you a few of those things. Now, it's an 18-hour program, so I'll just share with you the cliff notes. But essentially, to access past lives psychically, you would get yourself into a relaxed state. Of course, I always use hypnosis, being a hypnotherapist. I believe that's the easiest way to get into a relaxed state. And then you would do that through your third eye. You would do that through activating the third eye chakra. Of course, having gone through, you would of course go through a chakra cleansing. You would surround yourself with white light, and you would perhaps raise your kundalini to some degree. All of these things can get more technical and would require a lot more time to explain, but those who are into it would probably know how to do that already. So that's why I'm presenting just the cliff notes. To do it with astral projection, you would relax yourself hypnotically. That's the way I do it. Again, go through the chakra clearing, raising the kundalini being the energy that can power your astral body in order to consciously astral project. You would get yourself into the astral realm, at which point you would then access the Akashic records of either yourself or someone else and explore them. Now, I know I'm throwing out a lot of big terms, some terms that maybe people haven't heard of. There's a lot more detail to this, but unfortunately, with the constraints of the time that we have, I'm not able to offer a thesis on each individual one. But in broad strokes, these are the procedures you would use.
Okay. So, if we were to want to access a past life ourselves, just out of curiosity, we would do what? How would we? Can you give us an exercise that would help us to come into the space of being able to access through our own means?
Well, I would choose the path, the method of your favorite method. If it's psychically, then you would use the psychic procedure that I briefly outlined. If it's where you want to astral project and do it, I would use the astral projection procedure that I briefly outlined. If you want to do it just with hypnosis, you would put yourself into a hypnotic state using that procedure that I outlined by imagining yourself on a beach or something else relaxing, imagining yourself relaxing more, the sun setting as you count from 10 to 1. At that point, you're in a hypnotic state, and you can access your past lives using, as I mentioned, the train going back in this case. You would, of course, prime the pump beforehand. I would do all this in a recording. If you don't want to use one of my recordings or one of the hypnotic past life regression recordings that's already out there, you can make your own recording, but you would put all of these components on the recording.
What do you mean make your own recording? You mean just take to state these things on a recording and listen to your own voice? Is that what you're talking about? Or while you're in a past life, just whatever sounds come out of you? I imagine
I would do both. Have a recording that's going to put you into the past life and is going to ask you questions once you're there. Who are you? Where are you? What year is it? And also have a recorder running to capture the information. Now, obviously, this is better done with a professional recording that's already produced or with a hypnotherapist in a one-on-one session. But you can absolutely make your own recording and then have a recorder running also that's going to record your answers so that you can listen to them later.
So other the discomfort that becomes released, what is the value of going into a past life for the current life?
Well, it's a lot of fun. It's sort of like a vacation. You know, whenever you go to a past life, you get to see something that you already did. It's sort of like a vacation that you forgot about, and you remember it, and you think, wow, okay, that's very interesting that that happened. And then if you have the recording of it, you can listen to it and share it with your friends. So there's that value, which is sort of on the fun side that we haven't talked much about. There's also, as we talked extensively about, the therapeutic value, where you can be released of certain challenges, and that's going to allow you to live a richer, more full life in this lifetime, which is where people should really be focused anyway, doing what you can in the here and now. So it's going to make the here and now more powerful as well.
How much of the past life can you experience when you go into a past life in the here and now? Can you feel it in the here and now? Is it a here and now experience when you're there?
You can. As I mentioned, the first time I was regressed to a past life, it was a first-person experience, which I do not recommend. I recommend that you separate yourself from it and that you view it as if it's on a TV screen or a movie screen. The reason being that some people have a very emotional recollection of something, and you don't want to get caught up in that.
But who and what is the observer when you do that?
That's a good question. Who and what is the observer when you do that? So I would say that you are the observer yourself. That's a great question, Harrison. I like your deep probing questions. So the question is, when you go back to a past life and you're observing it as if it were on a TV screen or a movie screen, who is the actual observer? I would say in any case, and anytime we ask anything about what's going on, it is them. The further question becomes, what part of them would be the observer? I would say it's their subconscious mind and a little bit of their conscious mind, because anytime you're in hypnosis doing this, your conscious mind is somewhat intact. Of course, we cannot rule out the spiritual self or the overself, which would, of course, not be blocked in any way from observing it. So I would say it's them in their entirety, but the important observer would be that part of their conscious mind that's finally getting to see it and to bring that memory into their consciousness in this lifetime.
And is it a focus? Is it a function of attention?
I'd say absolutely, because they can focus on anything else they want. They can, during a hypnosis session, they can focus on the room if they want to. So it's definitely them focusing, allowing themselves to, or allowing, in the case of a hypnotherapist, allowing the hypnotherapist to allow them, the client, to focus on that past life.
Okay. So now, if you were to consult people who are interested in past lives at this point, what would you want to tell them to, for example, for our audience here? We have an audience of people, and our issues in the World Intuition Summit here are to fuse, the psychic experience, the intuitive experience, the consciousness experience, and the scientific experience. So a little bit, let's go to the scientific experience, and then what would you say to people who wanted to, who wanted to explore this further? So how much scientific knowledge or evidence can you attest to having explored this, or is there scientific evidence? Is there any kind of reference guide that we have to this, or is it so almost all anecdotal?
Well, most of what's presented is anecdotal, and it's evidence that, when I was working on my doctorate in education, they taught us to be very critical of anything that comes our way and to really check the source. A lot of what you hear will be just anecdotal. There will be no backing whatsoever. But as I mentioned, there's that book, I believe it's called Across Time and Death, something like that, which does give details. The lady remembered the place that she had lived and went back to it, and was able to be reunited with her children from a past life who were still alive. That's very strong evidence. The Monroe Institute contacted me about a year ago, and they're interested in doing a study about astral projection, and I believe they're weighing the body before and a living person before and during astral projection. Astral projection being when the soul separates itself from the physical body. They have an ongoing study with that, so I'd look forward to the findings of the Monroe Institute, which will hopefully be coming out soon. Those being in the realm of just the spirit existing, the soul existing, and so we do have a lot of real things going on, of real studies going on, but we also have, the majority of the information presented in books and so forth is purely anecdotal, and it's left up to the reader to decide. Well, do I believe it or not? Is it compelling or not? But there's so much of it, and it's so consistent that it looks like it's real. I mean, I believe it was we had one person regressing people back to the time of the crucifixion of Christ, and it was so he wasn't trying to do that. They just happened to end up there in a past life regression, and so you see that enough, and you think, well, okay, this crucifixion of Christ was probably a real event because so many people are going back to it. Either that, or they're so caught up in the Christianity stuff, the information that they have, that they just go to it because that's in their heads. So it's left to the listener and the reader to decide in most cases. But we also, as I mentioned, do have a lot of scientific studies out there.
So let me ask you this. So this brings up another question to me. So there are, there's a dream function to all this if it's anecdotal. So what's the dream aspect of all this?
Well, a lot of times when people come to me and want to have a past life regression, they've been having dreams. We'll go back to Egypt. That's a very common one. People have been having dreams about, ancient Egypt, not only decorating their houses that way, but having dreams about it. So dreams tend to give us hints about our past lives, it would seem. They tend to let us know, hey, this was happening, or that was happening, or this is an unresolved issue that needs to be looked at.
So, can we lucid dream ourselves into a place of past lives? Can we actually intend to go into this space and then create it, and then get information from a dream that appears, it seems real and that seems therapeutic and all that?
It is possible, and when developing my programs on lucid dreams, past lives, and the Akashic records, I was very careful to separate them and to make them distinct and to explain the distinction. One of the questions I get a lot about astral projection is a lucid dream the same thing as astral projection? And my answer is no. But it can be. It's not always the same, but it can be. A lucid dream is one. If people haven't seen the movie Waking Life, they should definitely see that. A great movie. It really it gives a how-to guide on lucid dreaming. It's a wonderful movie. And one of the things they show in the movie Waking Life is when you think you're in a lucid dream. In other words, when you think you wake up inside a dream, if you want to check it, go to a light switch and flip the light switch on and off. If the light switch doesn't have any power over the lighting in the room, you're probably in a lucid dream. Because in a lucid dream, the laws of physics, electricity in this case, don't necessarily obey, don't do what they're supposed to do. So you can test things such as that. Now that's what a lucid dream is. You becoming consciously aware within a dream that you are dreaming. And that can be then sort of used to go to a past life, but not necessarily. When you're in a dream, there's a lot of fantasy involved. Your imagination is involved. So you're not really getting pure past life information. You're getting, you may be getting cartoon characters. You may be jumping over buildings. You may be doing all sorts of things. There may be some sort of astral projection component involved where your spirit is separated from your body and you're in a lucid dream. So things sort of overlap and get a little confusing. For those reasons, I would not use a lucid dream as a means to access a past life.
Okay. So, this is fascinating stuff. We've explored a lot of issues around it, so this is really good stuff. Let me ask you, I know that, in the interest of our time constraints and everything else, you've put together an offer for us, for our audience here regarding past lives, and I'd like to kind of hear what that may be. Would you tell us, Steve?
Sure. I've got some recordings that I think would be very relevant. Now, we talked about doing hypnosis yourself. We talked about the benefit of using a recording, how it makes it a lot easier. So I've put together some recordings that are going to streamline all of this. I've actually got a recording for past life regression, sort of hands-free. It does all the work for you, so you don't have to worry about anything. And so that's one of the main things that I'm going to put in here. These recordings are sessions that I produced professionally with two college graduate sound engineers using a handmade Rhodes mic from Australia, using the same recording software that they use in Hollywood movies, which is Pro Tools, in a recording studio that I built from the ground up. So these are powerful recordings, but here are the titles that I've got. These are 1-hour recordings. We've got a hypnosis recording for past life regression to take you through a past life regression session. We've got one on building your psychic powers, as we talked about. We've got one on astral projection, so you can access the astral realms. We've got a hypnosis recording on relaxation. That's always good because you need to be calm for this or any other endeavor that you engage in your life. We've also got a recording for creativity, creative visualization to be exact, to allow you to creatively visualize not only your past but also your future. I've got a recording on meditation to teach you how to meditate properly. One of the big stress relievers I've found in my life has been meditation, the ability that I have to put myself into a meditative state. Also a recording on raising the Kundalini. We talked about the Kundalini being a powerful force that can aid you in conscious astral projection. So we've got that. Also a recording on concentration and focus, a recording on creating abundance, and one of my favorites, a recording on radiant health, accessing that potential that you have to have ongoing radiant health. So these recordings are normally $79.95 each. We're bundling all of them up. 10 of them, and I believe today it's under $200. I believe it's $199 or so for all of these. So just adding value to everyone's lives and making things easier for you.
So we have 10 1-hour recordings in multiple areas that have a value of changing life, that have a value of enhancing life, value of exploration. We know that unequivocally, as we have been exploring here over the past beginnings of the World Intuition Summit, that the questions that we ask ourselves often open us up to the consciousness to be able to understand, access, clear, go to, experience almost anything that we want in this entire lifetime, and maybe in past and future lifetimes. So what we've got here from Steve is an extraordinary package, 10 1-hour recordings that will access all these things, from creative visualization to radiant health to astral projection to redressing yourself. So all of this is an amazing, amazing offer, Steve. So I'm really thrilled that you put this together for us. It's awesome. And the price is extraordinary. So, $197 for the whole package bundled and compiled, and you guys will have an awesome experience with this. So I'm looking forward to discussing this further and going into other places with it if we can as we go. But I wanted to thank Steve for coming by this evening, and you have been listening to Steve G. Jones. To access this package, Dr. Steve G. Jones, to access this package, I want to give you a website or a URL, and it's a little bit different probably than the one we did before. So theworldintuitionsummit.com/Steve G. Jones, one word. So it's STEVE, G as in Jerry, or G as in good, Jones, JONES, all lowercase. So the / is Steve G. Jones, one word, lowercase, STEVE, G as in good, Jones, JONES. So Steve, if you would, our time for today is up. I appreciate what you've done, what you've come here to do, and what you've come here to share with us. And would you kind of take a moment and tell people about kind of what would you recommend here at this particular point, or what would you like to say as sort of the parting words for today to the audience?
Well, I'd recommend following your passion. If those recordings can help you, then go, by all means, take advantage of the offer that we have. Hypnosis has made all the difference for me. It's made the difference that brought me out of my shell, that really helped me in my life to be a productive, contributing individual. So if I can bring that value to your life also, then I think that's awesome. And as far as advice goes, I like to quote the musical group America, which said, Oz never did give nothing to the Tin Man that he didn't already have. Of course, the musical group, of course, they're talking about the Wizard of Oz, and he gave physical representations of things that people already had. So that's where hypnosis comes into play. It's a sort of a reminder, a representation of the power that you already have. You already have the wonder, the amazement, the beauty, everything that you want, you already have. But sometimes you need a little help accessing that, bringing it out, making it bigger, making it stronger. That's where hypnosis comes into play. That's where these recordings are going to change your life.
Awesome. Parting words. Awesome parting words. So as always, we here at the World Intuition Summit, we affirm your potential, we affirm your magnificence, we affirm all the greatness that is within you, because it is within you. There is no doubt in any of our minds that it's within you. And, let's access the most magnificent selves we can have, the ideal selves and the real selves and all the other things in between that. Your potential is unlimited, your magnificence is unquestioned, and your greatness is the ability to be the true self that you are and find out all those things about yourself, which is the most important thing on the planet that you can do, is to find out what you are, who you are, and how that works in all of creation. So thank you, Steve G. Jones, for coming on, Dr. Steve G. Jones, for coming on to our World Intuition Summit today, and it's been an awesome pleasure having you, and we will have you back again.
Thank you, Harrison. Great to be here.